Hello and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PRWeek UK. I'm PRWeek's Deputy Editor Siobhan Holt, and I'm joined by my colleague, PRWeek UK's Editor John Harrington. And as the festive season is fast approaching, we're going to discuss the latest Christmas campaigns. I'm joined by our guest, Greg Double, Creative Director at Burson, and Lora Martyr, Executive Creative Director at Taylor Herring and St Mark's Studio. So welcome both. Are you ready to chat about Christmas?
We are.
And all things festive?
Feeling festive.
Jingled.
Nice. Okay, I'm going to fire off then with my first question. So, which Christmas or Christmas campaign stood out to you the most and why?
I was going to let Laura rant on about how brilliant Aldi was, right?
I'm going to let you rant on about how brilliant Aldi is.
So we thought kind of both got a bit of skin in the game on this one, but I really thought it was Aldi. I thought it was in a fairly, I don't want to say standard, but like a lot of ads I felt sort of merged into each other today, or this season rather, I should say. And Aldi's made me laugh. And the line, "I went to Lapland for the dancing," is one of the best, what I'd call like, it's almost like a Toy Story joke where the kids don't laugh, the adults do laugh, and that's like perfect writing, especially pre-Watershed, so I love that. But it's also it's just funny. And Kevin the Carrot has gone on, like my daughter has a Kevin the Carrot toy. I thought the accompanying PR campaign around it is very, very good in terms of there's now a 1 carrot ring out, which is just very on point for Aldi, and I think they've done a lot of noise, which I think is from Clarion, around engagements at Christmas, which I think if you did a good audience matchup, I think that would go very nicely with the Aldi audience. And yeah, it just felt like the most together. And I both thought the PR in the wild and the ad made me genuinely laugh. And I think that's
Definitely feels the most integrated. John Lewis as well has that kind of integrated element. But I guess the interesting thing about Aldi instead of the others is that it's gone in a sort of a phased approach, which I don't think a brand has done before. So you're sort of continuing the story across a number of weeks and what happens to Kevin. But I agree, the campaigns this year have been safer, shall we say. There are elements to each one that I like and there are elements to each one that I don't. That, to me, that actually isn't like a massive standout campaign, I think. So I think Aldi is the most integrated. And then second to that would be John Lewis, because obviously they've got the whole music element sitting alongside it. I actually thought, it's, I didn't realise it was Labyrinth. I thought it was, I'm going to forget his name now, James Vincent McMorrow. Does that ring any bells for anyone? Did an amazing cover of High Love. Anyway.
Of all the names you were going to make, that was not the one I had ready.
Oh, right. Well, it sounds like him. And if anyone hasn't heard him, he's a really good artist.
I was going to add to that. Like I didn't know John Lewis did vinyl until now, so I learned something new as well. And I think they've got a partnership with Rough Trade, which is their hi-fi Wi-Fi system, and all the money from that record is now going to children with care, who lived in care, which I thought was nice. Everyone does it. It's up there with Potholes and Seagulls now of offer, shop the ad, and that will get coverage. And I think John Lewis gets that more so than most. But no, I thought what was interesting about John Lewis as well, and it sort of frames, I suppose, the rest of where this chat might go, is that it got weird fans from right-wing commentators who were just delighted that a man had featured, and not only that, 2 white men. And that became a big talking point on, well, you can imagine which social platform it was a big talking point on, but it was a big deal on X. And I think that was interesting to me that so much of that, and then that became a lot of...
And immediately linked with adolescence and...
which was some stretch.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting, and perhaps goes somewhere to Laura's point around why a lot of adverts were a lot safer, a culture war-free zone this year.
The only thing I would say is that I laughed out loud when Dawn French screamed in the car in that first bit of the M&S video. Yeah, like fully laughed out loud. I have done that, unsurprisingly, to anyone that knows me.
I totally get the thing about feeling very safe, because you talk about, obviously, Kevin the Carrot is back again, recurring character for many years now, maybe a decade or so. It does feel like, and you saw other famous characters like the Grinch and so on in Asda. Yeah, is that sense of like people actually do want the familiar when it comes to Christmas, and maybe most brands are going to be playing it more safe, when times are tough and they think they just need to get back to basics. What do you think's behind it?
I was talking to a friend of mine about this last night, actually, and I don't know whether getting back to basics is actually what everyone wants. There's a lot of rhetoric out there. I've been reading lots of articles about it saying that, we don't want to be shown the kind of the big feasts and the kind of like opulent Christmases because of the cost of living crisis and all that kind of thing. But I don't know whether I'm in the minority here, but I sort of feel like Christmas is its own thing, that I don't think people would be offended by seeing the kind of warm Christmas Dickensian feast-like opulence. I've said that twice now. Aside from, I know we're going to get on to HFSS, aside from that, I don't know why it would have been sort of veered away from, whereas I think some of the campaigns, as you say, have gone quite sort of straight. Lidl, for example, has kept it very stripped back. And I think there's opportunity actually to go a bit more, like more festive than I think we've seen.
I think there is probably a balance to be struck in terms of playing safe doesn't mean that you don't have to. I think the safety is coming from, let's try not to offend anyone. So yeah, I think what we're seeing now is that a lot of brands are playing for a draw rather than and avoiding defeat rather than going for the win. And I think that's perhaps reflective to what happened to a lot of brands last year who did step out with, say, a really progressive or a really out there thing and then got slammed back for it for various different reasons. And I think the media has to answer for a lot of that, where it never celebrates the loveliness of an ad, but is very quick to jump on what could be the negative of the ad, which I think plays a certain role into it. But to Laura's point, that doesn't mean that you just have to go product. Kevin is funny. No one is offended by a carrot going on a stag do, even if it was to Lapland, the saucy mix. I think there's going to be a correction next year again, where I think people will come out a bit stronger. But I think a certain precedent is making people a bit tetchy and has set the vibe for how the rest of it will follow.
I mean, also, I wonder whether, is the general public's appetite the same for the Christmas campaigns as it previously was? When I was 18, I worked at the Consumer Information Centre at Coca-Cola. So like the number on the side of the tin, you'd get through to me. And I used to get letters being like, when is the Christmas ad coming out? It's not Christmas until Holidays Are Coming is on. You're ruining Christmas. And I was like, it's not my fault. I'm so sorry. Over the last few years, I think it's kind of dialed back slightly, the appetite for it.
And yeah, they're launching earlier, aren't they? So maybe it's been spread out a bit more. And you were talking, Greg, about the sort of serialization approach that we're seeing a bit now. Maybe there is that sense of there's not just one big moment. There are more of them. And that sense of like the absolute blockbuster John Lewis ad, because this time it sort of just came out, didn't it? Yeah. I didn't see so much of a build up to it.
Well, I think actually the channel execution is really interesting. Like, so it came out actually a few days earlier than we think it came out, because it got offered to John Lewis subscribers and newsletters before anyone else. And so they were the first people to see it. And I think that's a reflection of how important owned channels are becoming, especially in the world of HFSS, where that is a channel you are allowed to talk directly to your consumers. But I think it talks mainly to media fragmentation. I think to your general point on the death of the big one, but there's a thing with Amy Lou Wood was meant to be the face of the M&S advert, and you've seen all the reports on that, on why she dropped out, why she not dropped out, and it just seems to be that there's been a C-suite level decision to focus on more sector product-based stuff than having one big hero. And that's interesting. And I think, I completely forgot to mention it, but actually one of my favourite Christmas ads this year by a mile was probably JD Sports. And their advert, I don't think it's barely a Christmas advert. It looks like a brand advert. Their thing was that they gave 200 odd mobile phones to young adults and said, go film. And then they put the end result together with a little bit of festive lights and Christmas. And I thought that was interesting in itself for a whole heap of reasons. But I thought it was interesting that it was a brand advert, but not necessarily a Christmas advert beyond there was a few festive lights in. And then you think about that audience and you go, well, actually, this Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they're not buying at Christmas. They're buying at Boxing Day and they're buying in January sales. So maybe this is the sort of advert you're going to see more of, really hyper targeting your audience. And I think that's really, really important in terms of, if you're trying to attract Gen Z, why are you making a big TV ad? They're not seeing it.
But I also think, to your point, John, of that it's starting maybe like 10 days earlier than it even did last year. I mean, what were we all talking about last week? Traitors, I would argue. So actually, not that they were to have known that, but actually, arguably, if they'd waited a little bit, maybe there'd be a bigger reaction. I don't know.
There's also a really practical reason. It just gives you more paydays. And that is quite literally, you're lining up a consumer, they're spreading the cost, you spread the cost to go with it. You might buy food before November the 25th, and then you'll buy food before December the 18th, 19th, or whenever the payday lands this time. You give you two consumer days to end up, and that might be some of the things you're seeing in, like, we've got some data that suggests that people are trying to split their shopping over to even free Christmas paydays. Makes sense to ads would follow suit.
That's a really good way of looking at it. Obviously, we spoke about your favourite campaigns. Were there any that you were sort of less keen on, or you thought they could have done differently? Maybe there was a slight misstep there?
Yeah, you're not going to get me on that, John. All the ones that were not by a WPP. No, it was. I think you're hearing quite similar stuff from me and Laura. Is that there were some that I was just like, I wish you'd just been a smidge more fun. There was none, and again it goes back to that point on safety. There's none that I have a hot take on negatively, because none provoked that reaction sort of thing. Like, if I was to be really picky, like, I loved where Asda was going with the Grinch, and I thought the first half of that poem was like really good consumer honesty in terms of the Grinch is finding it a bit tight, and then he gets happy because Asda price, right? And it was just like, I thought that was quite refreshing to see a brand be that honest and call it, and I think Asda's the right brand to do that. Me just being greedy, I would have just liked to have seen that carried on and been even more honest, and then dripping into an earned campaign and social campaign about where are people struggling? Is this reflected in the products that are coming in? Is it reflected in their pricing strategy that some items are going to come down? I think there's probably a better time to segue to this, but I thought it was astonishing how many of the supermarkets went for picky bits as their Christmas. It was just like, which is both, I think, an HFSS thing, but also a cost thing of, a turkey's going to be a big, massive turkey, anywhere between 20 to 80 to 100 to 200 quid. You can't just throw that on a feasty table at the moment without it feeling a bit coarse. So, picky bitsmas for the win.
Picky bitsmas, but it was all about parties this year, because you got Boots as well, which was all about getting ready for the ball.
Yes. It was a ball with cinders, of course, and Rapunzel, which isn't like any party I've been to. But no, there was a little bit more Friendsmas as well, wasn't there, I suppose? Like, the Burberry out at Christmas is brilliant for that, where you were just like, oh my God, like, how many more A-listers are you going to hit us with? And it's just like, they're everywhere. And I was just like, I'm just there more excited about Jennifer Saunders. And then Sun comes in, you're like, Sunny! It was just like almost a sensory overload of A-listers. And that was cool. Like, I just think Burberry I think if you are like, I try not to be too envious of other creative, but I'm really envious of what Burberry are doing. I just think it's really, really classy.
I haven't seen their Christmas stuff, but the stuff in the lead up, so with Olivia Colman in the fish shop and all that kind of stuff is amazing.
It's similar vibes. Yeah, it's exceptionally highly polished, A-listers everywhere. It feels like a little bit Richard Courtesy, if that could be a verb, but in terms of everyone being there. But Burberry are allowed to be decadent because Burberry are Burberry. Whereas I think if Asda did something like that, you'd just be like, whoa there. But I thought that was really nice.
And I suppose with those campaigns, you still have to think about your staff as well, don't you? If you're, say, quitting jobs, you can't have a Christmas ad that's maybe got 7 ambassadors. You've got to be really sensitive of that going on internally as well as externally on the comms.
That was one of the things I did like about Sainsbury's' advert. They used their staff in the advert, which I just think is a really classy touch. And it's when people talk about integration, they sometimes forget how important internal comms is. And especially for a company the size of Sainsbury's, your internal comms are like, I don't know what the exact number is for Sainsbury's, but your internal comms is a fairly sizable audience worth considering.
Yeah, and obviously probably your biggest shoppers.
Yes.
Yeah,
and advocates. Laura, going back to campaigns you're less keen on, have you got any that stand out?
Again, none that like massively, I'm being so boring, sorry. None that massively stand out as being sort of like, oh God, I hate that. I think with Sainsbury's, I think the story could have been better. I think it could have pulled at the heartstrings more, just going into the sort of classic Christmas tropes. Because it was all about an unexpected guest. And I think everyone can agree that there's always one person that turns up that you don't expect to turn up. You've got to bring out the extra chair, the emergency chair, someone sat on a gym ball in the corner. And then there's a line in it that was something along the lines of, no, it's Christmas, of course you're welcome, or we'll make space. And I felt like that wasn't, as a concept, I thought that was going to be the concept that was explored. And it wasn't. It was just the other giant kind of stealing Christmas in a sort of Grinchy way, I guess, rather than it being about maybe welcoming someone that you wouldn't normally welcome in or something like that. And I think they could have been a bit more emotive if they potentially had gone down a route.
Do you think there was maybe some tension there, creative tension that was one of the routes, but actually at some point someone said we need to focus on the products a bit more? And the other storyline was a way to sort of look at all the stuff we've got.
Potentially. But then, I don't know, could the giant have been welcomed in? Maybe the giant just wanted to be invited for Christmas dinner or something. But I think you have a point there. I'd be really, really interested to know where the campaign started versus what came out, just from a safety perspective, because I would imagine that they went through a number of iterations.
I can guarantee John's right, though. Someone said at some point, can we get some more product in there? Followed by, can we get a multi-buy in there? Followed by this. So
make the logo bigger.
Yeah, of course it would have done. Like it's still, it's a Christmas advert. It's still making creative, so that would have happened.
The campaign for me that I was a bit disappointed in was the Asda one, because I totally get your point on it, that I think it got its clientele right in the sense of, obviously it's gone back to its ethos, which I think was great. But I was a bit disappointed that they played on the tight Yorkshireman vibe. I got why as well, because I know that that's where the company's based and it made sense. But I was just a bit like, don't play into
the
tropes.
Grinch. So the Grinch had a Yorkshire accent.
It's got a Yorkshire
I picked
accent.
up on that. I thought that was really odd, because the Grinch is American.
Yes. Yeah. And
presumably.
Yes. Yeah. Written by an American. We hope so. Yeah. So if we're giving him a voice, surely he is American. But yeah, I was just a bit disappointed in that personally, because I think it's not giving the best. I think that it did actually say in the story that we published that I think because it's based in Yorkshire, the brand Asda, that was sort of a hark back to that. It stood out as odd to me, like it did you, John.
More so than Puss and Puss in Boots being, I believe, Cornish or West Country.
Yeah, that was another one that...
Some funky accents.
The BFG was Cornish, wasn't he?
Well...
Or West, maybe Devon.
I'm pretty sure he is West Country.
West Country, yes.
I don't know, that felt right to me.
Yeah.
It was on brand. Hard to tell at this stage. Like, who am I to say if an animated cat should be from Cornwall?
Is that, do you think, ticking a regional, like we've done that box potentially on the tick list?
Like, as a Londoner from London, I'm not in the best position to talk about this, but like there wasn't any Cockneys, were there today?
No,
so like it was. Honestly, I think sometimes you can do it. It's like going back to the Traitors. I always remember that woman who pretended to be Welsh. For
Oh
the
my god, that was
thing.
iconic.
Like because
actually iconic.
But it was like because Welsh was more trusted, and I wonder if Yorkshire gives off homely and down to earth and all the things that they were doing in terms of grounding. To your point, Siobhan, like I also think Asda, because they are a Leeds-based company, have more right to do that than say any other company would do coming in. But it's like if Yorkshire Tea are unashamedly Yorkshire, why can't Asda be unashamedly Yorkshire as well?
I guess the difference is it's unashamedly Yorkshire in a positive way versus unashamedly Yorkshire in a somewhat negative
tight man way.
Yeah.
I think if you meet Yorkshiremen, they're very proud of how tight they are sometimes as well. So it's like I take it, but that's a prime example of how you can make something that might not have even been spoken about, might not have even been contemplated, and yet you picked up on it. It was like one of my favourite examples for that was, I think it was a Waitrose one, if not last year, but a year before. The scene was a farmer working in the sunshine, and he'd got an obvious tan.
Yeah.
And I think it was someone from like the melanoma charity complained about it because it was like basically demonstrating unsafe work environments or coming through that. Now, without dropping too much of a bomb on this, I've had cancer. I am a cancer person. I wouldn't have stood a chance on that. There is no way I would have seen that. And I think sometimes you've got to give people the benefit of the doubt and say, sometimes they just made a decision. Like, and when you go through, when you do a review of when something's gone wrong and you go like, oh, could we have seen that coming? Could we have not seen that coming?
Yeah.
I'd have filed the melanoma one into, I would not have seen that coming. And hopefully that's the same for the Asda one. But as you say, like your ears heard it that way.
Yeah. What about the John Lewis one? Because that always sparks a lot of debate. Seems to be, anecdotally, I think, when we spoke to people, John, that parents seem to like it. Especially dads seem to have connected. I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
I keep being sent memes around the John Lewis ad, which is they play the first bit where it's like, this is what John Lewis thinks raving in the 90s is like, and then it quickly cuts to a very sweaty, like huge-eyed person at a rave in the 90s. Very different vibes.
Why was his eyes so wide?
Just having a lovely time.
Oh, great.
I think he was surprised by something that happened. Yeah,
He's on camera. He's being filmed, the lights in his eyes.
I'm a big sucker for anything which uses music properly, and it does. So love that. I think the insight between dads, I mean, I'm probably not the one that should be speaking about this, but the insight between dads and sons potentially not having like a direct line of communication, I'm actually a little bit sad if that is still the case. It feels like something that you would say in the 50s or about sort of like, I don't know, my grandparents' era. So if it is resonating with people, I mean, it's great that it's resonating with people. And I do think it's sort of heartwarming, but it makes me sad if that is the case. If I guess.
Situation, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, I thought a bit simpler. I just thought blokes aren't very good at talking to each other. And so, again, to bring a bit of personal into it, like I lived with my dad growing up, like, and it was just me and him. And it's so, I've always had quite a healthy, talkative relationship with my dad. But I remember Christmas was always a big time for us in terms of, like, really, and especially, I actually think the age of the kid is the bit that's really significant, is when you're like, I placed him at about 15, 16, which is when you are least capable of forming anything that isn't a grunt at your parents. And that's how I read it, which was just like, at that age, you are more likely to tell your dad to F off than you are anything nice, right? And so I just saw it as a nice eye contact made, depth. I thought the depth was nice. Like, the bit that I really related to was immediately feeling old raving, where it was just like, that's the bit that's a bit tragic, where you're like, oi, I saw a little bit of myself there, and I saw a little bit of myself in the 16-year-old being just like, right, I don't really know what to say to my dad. I know that I'm meant to give him a present. I know that I might have just got my first job and I actually can get him something like this. And the creative line is the thing that I thought was gorgeous from John Lewis, which is when you don't have the right words, the right gift. Yeah. And that is just spot on for me.
I actually think that's a really good point in terms of the age of the kid. So it's kind of the point in teenage life when you think you know everything, you think you're an adult, and you almost have to like redefine I hadn't actually thought of that. Yeah, you have to redefine your relationship with your parent, because it is the same with girls as well. You get to a point where you're like, actually, I don't know. I now have to form a relationship with you like woman to woman, as opposed to, you know, I'm your kid. And so it was really, so then having the flashbacks, I
think you could have done that exact same advert with women, and it would have been fine. Like, it would have, it's just, that's why I think the thing about adolescence and the thing where it's like become a real GB news topic is because it was a bloke that was a bit different. But it just wasn't. It's just like, I think the age was the most relevant creative moment. The age of the dad in terms of being like, oh, I used to be like a sick raver, and now I'm a dad, and that's not bad or good. It's just like, that's how your life moves on. And then the age of the son is there, and the son is wearing headphones, and they're music headphones, so you know that the son likes music too, and so that's their way of connecting.
And also, if you think about, I mean, they talk about the kind of the most like visceral senses for memory. One of them's supposed to be smell, but obviously through a TV you can't exactly experience that. But the next one is, I mean, honestly, if I hear a piece of music or a track that I sometimes I don't even know what it is, and I'll start feeling something and just be like, this is taking me back to a specific moment in my past, and I can get it's almost like I'm there, and which is literally what it does in the ad as well.
I suppose a question back to you guys. When you watched that, did you think any brand had enhanced or lessened their reputation in what they were trying to do?
Well, when I saw it, for the first time, I didn't really feel anything. I honestly felt absolutely nothing watching it. I don't say that with any, that's not an exaggeration, and I don't know what it was, but usually John Lewis ads, even if, you know, I like some of them more than others, but I feel something there, even if it's like the Elton John one, and definitely the one with the skateboarder a few years ago that I thought was like a lovely video in itself, just in isolation. But for this, I didn't quite know, maybe because I'm not a dad, and I didn't have experience of having a dad growing up, it didn't really do anything for me. And I think that might be because of my situation as above. So I don't know. But then is that a bad thing that maybe you can't appeal to everyone, and the vast majority of people do have experiences of children or their parents that they can relate to there? I don't know.
I just realised with previous ones, there's been an element of, like, I was going to say pursuit, but of trying. So, for example, with the skateboarding one, you saw the efforts that this man was going to, and he was falling over and he was getting back up, and it was literally the human trial and error to then have that payoff, and you then find out why. Whereas I guess there wasn't, we didn't see the son out struggling to find the perfect thing, or them struggling to talk. We came in at the punchline.
There was a lot more assumed.
Yeah.
I think about the relationship. Like, I've filled in the gaps myself for the bits. Like the age thing, like that was the thing that appealed to me first. To other people, they didn't see it at all. I think, John, your experience probably does dictate it a little bit, because there's loads of adverts I've seen that people go like, oh my God, that's so moving. And it's like, well, because I'm not a black woman, it's not hitting me in the same way. I can appreciate the craft, but that's fine, because it wasn't for me. Like, and that's fine, which I think was interesting for John Lewis to really zone in on a dad and a son in terms of they are a brand for loads of people. But yeah, I think, of course, you're like you're. But if you're everything to all people, you're nothing at all, are you? And I think that sense of audience narrowing is something you're going to see not just at Christmas, but more broadly everywhere. And that we talk about new wave media a hell of a lot. And what that means is you are seeing less. This is happening with social media as well. You're seeing less breadth and more community, and nailing it on, and Discord and Reddit channels have suddenly become really interesting. Like, I'm a member of a Reddit channel that's got about 4,000 members that is just jokes about David Attenborough, is he still alive yet? And the answer is yes or no, depending on what goes on. And people try to get it's hilarious. And if that's like, that's the way the social media is deconstructing, that's the way the other media is deconstructing. I think you might see loads, like, to the point on this one, I think you could do a mum advert. I think you could do the same relationship. That, for me, was an advert about relationships. John Lewis could carry on that theme all the way into January, February for the rest of the year if they wanted to keep on tapping into the relationship.
Yeah, fascinating. It was really, really fascinating insights.
Obviously, we were talking before about how some of the music is going to be sold and the money will go to charity. I was just wondering if there were any other earned elements that stood out to you from any of the campaigns.
It's interesting how many charity partnerships there were. I think nearly all of them.
Sainsbury's and Lidl definitely
Lidl went hardest on it. Their entire advert was
that's the toy bank. And yes, and then Sainsbury's, and then John Lewis. So yeah, all the big hitters. But I think in terms of the sort of separate earned piece, the only two that I've really seen do anything really, bar just the sort of normal press around it, is Aldi and John Lewis, with the kind of the music element and the carrot ring.
Nothing more. I said it earlier. Like, I think Aldi's is hella fun. I think John Lewis, you expect it to be all joined up, and it was. I don't think, like, this is the thing, when you told us it was the Christmas campaign, my favourite thing to do with the Christmas campaign is to put some salt and vinegar on the epic chip I've got on my shoulder about ad creative being seen as the pinnacle. And I was going to go, right, I'm going to go all in on the earned coverage. And there wasn't an awful lot of it. And I think, Sainsbury's, you're right, I think got their story out a little bit better in terms of where the charity was going. And there's going to be, as I understand it, an extension of the BFG advert for that charitable element, which is lovely. But again, I think it comes down to that safety. And look, Christmas for brands, I think, is about reputation and building your reputation capital, and it's a point where you can really earn points. And I think a lot of brands were more concerned with losing them than gaining them this time.
But potentially we might be talking about this slightly too early. The earned stuff might be yet to come.
At time of recording, no earned campaign.
Yeah.
Yes. But I wonder, assuming things carry on as they have been, with the sort of the paid element just leading everything, should the PR industry be a bit concerned by that, do you think? That we've had a few really cracking earned media Christmas campaigns, and actually the Taylor Herring's The Missing Bounty one is one that springs to mind, and there have been several others. But yeah, is there any element of being concerned about that, or just the way it is?
Like, I actually think Laura's point around timing could actually really come into it. Not really. Like, it's the usual of, like, I think, look, what brands are trying to do at the moment and what we're, like, really big advocates for is, like, this sense of, right, brand as publisher and an ecosystem. And so you have this sense of, right, if there's a TV advert over here that is appealing to your TV audience and that is hitting certain demographics here, here, and here, then you've got your social campaign, which is going to hit here, here, and here. You've got your earned campaign that's going to hit here and here. And you create surround sound, basically. And more so than ever, the channels are dictated by the demographics you're trying to reach and the communities you can go to. So not really. Again, to bring the HFSS thing into it, Paid is basically had its shoelaces tied together.
If anything, it's going to like pave the way for earned around Christmas, because this is the time when you're going to be talking about that kind of food.
I was going to say, if you want to get some chocolate away, you need a PR agency. You don't need an ad agency, and it needs to go out well. And the creative needs to be on point, because it needs to be so on point that you can't just throw a load of paid behind it on social for it to be seen. It's got to be really, really good. And I will blow some smoke towards Laura's way. Like, the Bounty thing was superb because it tapped into a real consumer insight. My absolute favourite thing about it, and if I'm going to try so hard to make this sound like a dig because it's not, it is genuinely said with love, was just how little tins had to be made because that insight was so good. Like, I think there was only about 20...
There were more than 20.
I was just looking at you for the confirmation before I just get myself sued. There were...
I can't.
25.
I think it was in the hundreds. It
Yeah.
was in the hundreds.
So
It was national.
Yeah, it was like, it was enough. But it doesn't matter because the insight was so good. Everyone's had the Bounty chat. Do you know what I mean? So it's perfect. And I think Laura...
I thought you were going to say your favourite thing about it was my singing.
It was, I didn't know you were credited. It was like, John Lewis, if you're listening, Laura is available for a breakdown, deconstructed version. But no, of course, it was like, look, I don't mind showing my hand. We've got something fairly big going out with TK Maxx, but it's an influencer event because that's what we need to do for that context. That's happening November the 20th, which we're talking about, is it too early, is it too late? We think that's about spot on. And it's like November the 20th, it's very close to a payday, it's coming through, and we're thinking about when are we going to be doing this activity in and around Oxford Street, in and around where the Christmas lights are and coming on. It's like, these are the things that you've got to factor into earned ideas now, because we've got to be, to your point, John, we're under the cosh from all sides now. So it's Paid want to come and do earned because they're having their lunch eaten. Social want to come and do earned because they know that earned is where the money is at to come through. That leaves a big gap for earned specialists to be exceptionally desirable and wealthy, but you've got to be good. And that means bringing everyone in on your journey, and part of that being good is proving that your ideas work, can build reputation and can sell. And I think that's a huge, huge part of it. And yeah, I think you might see less visible campaigns, but more commercially driven campaigns that really hit the bottom line.
Interesting. You mentioned influencers there. I did want to ask about why we haven't seen more influencers, because that was one of the big predictions, wasn't it? That there were more influencers.
So I've got a smoking hot take on this. It's because influencers aren't TV famous, so don't put them on TV. Influencers, you know where you saw loads of influencers? The JD Sports campaign. Why? Because it happened on social. Who's famous on social? Influencers. Everyone in a lane. You don't put... It's even Mr. Beast was a bit of a TV flop. Like, he is the biggest YouTuber by a mile. He could walk down Oxford Street unrecognised by over 30s. Like, it's play to your strengths and put in your lane. And again, when we talk about that ecosystem, it's about putting people in the right place. I think you can do it skillfully with cameos and like really nice surprises. I think there was a bit of that in Burberry. But like, for example, like, so Shakira's our head of influence, and she goes, "Oh, did you notice the influencer in Burberry?" We're like, no, I was hit with too many A-listers. I was overwhelmed. I think it's about keeping people in their lane where they are most in. Don't put a TikTok star on Instagram. Don't put an Instagram star on Twitter. It's like, play to your strengths. So I think what you might see is an Instagram extension of John Lewis, for example. There's going to be an extension of this campaign, which I think will include influencers. I could even guess which couple it will be, given the soundtrack, given the music.
As it should. I sort of feel like influencers are there for you to leverage their audiences, and you should speak in their language to their fan base. It's interesting. So then tying this back into kind of HFSS, which obviously then it makes the influencer piece slightly more difficult, but then going back into sort of a campaign across different channels, your main sort of TV channel then will ultimately likely become far more just brand and sort of master brand. And that's something that I find really interesting about the approach of the main campaigns this year. To me, aside from John Lewis, whose tone of voice has been set kind of for years, so you know it's a John Lewis ad, and M&S, you know it's an M&S ad, even though they're going to likely have some difficulties with HFSS, but it's glossy, it's got a quality to it that you know it's M&S. The others haven't done that, which might be why they're leveraging sort of the BFG and you know Kevin and that kind of thing, but you can't immediately go, oh, that's a Sainsbury's ad, oh, that's whoever, Morrison's. I'm curious to see whether next year, when they can't show all of the HFSS foods, how that will play out, because it's got to be brand focused then. And if they don't have a really strong tone of voice, or even if it's not a strong tone of voice, like a strong visual tone, how are they going to stand out?
We should probably clarify for people who aren't as aware, the HFSS new regulations around promotion of high fat, sugar and salt that have had huge ramifications for advertising and marketing campaigns and so on.
And it's impacting the campaigns this Christmas, although the regulation doesn't officially start till January. Is that, I've got that correct, haven't I?
Yeah.
So what other sort of challenges do you think then PR and marketing professionals have faced this year? I mean, is it that they can't show a mince pie before 9 p.m? How does it work?
Well, technically, as you say, you're fine at the moment, but from an advertising perspective, arguably people might have erred on the side of caution because they thought it was coming in earlier than it was, and obviously ad campaigns are scripted and basically done and dusted by the end of July. From an earned perspective, the door is wide open for us. I think this is our moment to kind of step in. As we were saying, if you want to advertise chocolate, you can't anymore. You've got to go through earned.
But if you were to gift it, could you end up in trouble?
I believe so, yes.
Hashtag ad, hashtag spot.
Okay.
But no,
I think it's seen as payment.
Yeah, no,
or
it
will
is.
Be seen as payment. I'm not sure if it is yet.
You might also get in trouble with the tax man now as well, because it's got to be his now. I think if you get gifted something, you've got to declare it as well as a freelancer. So it comes in, like, look, truthfully, it's, I don't want to say a red herring, but it's more of an opportunity than a problem, I think, for our space. In that I personally, again, a bit of a chip on my shoulder about this, but I think if you have to put loads of money behind your campaign just to get it seen, that's not good marketing, like in a sense. And that is, it's kind of how the social media channels and companies have been set up to monetize. Now their model is changing, that I think you can see a bit of this model changing too. But I think Laura's said a lot of it. I think we said a lot of it on the previous question. It's an incredible opportunity. And it's a system that rewards incredible creativity, because you need it to be organic. And to be organic on social media that is trying to get everyone to pay for everything is really, really tricky. So then you've got to be looking at, right, how do you create organic, which is an oxymoron on purpose, which is like, right, and you're now going to have to go looking at communities to essentially be your Kickstarter. Like, what's your equivalent of spending 10,000 to get eyeballs? It might be grinding on Discord, Reddit, communities, dark channels like WhatsApp, building a fan base of there, using your own channels first to give you that drive of viewership that have the same impact that paid support does. And that is where I think, again, comms agencies especially have a competitive advantage, because we're used to talking direct to consumer and reaching out to those communities and fostering them. And some of the more like old school techniques of knowing where forums are happening are directly applicable to your Reddits and your Discords and your Twitches.
And actually, from a creative standpoint, sometimes having parameters is actually a great challenge. So not touch wood, Not overly concerned.
No, it's like I always use women's football as like my go-to example for this. Is if you try and do a women's football campaign to appeal to everyone that likes football, your engagement rate is not great. If you do a women's football campaign aimed at women's football fans, your engagement rate is through the roof. And I've seen that. We did some great work with TK Maxx in this space, but I've seen this at previous places. Like I've done this with Just Eat. They continue to do really well in that space because they're aiming it at women's football fan, not like, hey, women's football for everyone. It doesn't work like that. You channel the audience, you get your payback in spades. I reckon we credited more TK Maxx customers at this women's football event to a crowd of about 200 than we would have done putting 50 grand worth of spend behind a social media bit of content to go through. It's the other thing as well, when people say like, do better creative, make your creative out, or do events, get people in real life, do real life stuff. Like people are craving connection again. And that's how I think you can build your reputation as a brand. Work harder.
Fair enough.
Very quickly, because we are running out of time, are there any other big trends you could briefly pick out from the Christmas campaigns this year that you'd noticed?
Picky bits. The end of performative wokery, and sort of that sense that everything is political, and a lot more. I think it was more product focus.
Yeah.
Generally stripped back, and it didn't feel very.
Didn't feel very Christmassy.
It didn't feel very Christmassy.
Controversial.
Maybe I just don't feel very Christmassy. Is that it? Could be a me
I
problem.
think you're right.
We need some tinsel for the PRWeek studio.
Yeah.
There wasn't. There was in Fleet. It's like I'm also like I'm a sucker for Christmas. I love it. Like I come from a big old family. Like everyone needs to get together. You can play me like a fiddle at Christmas. Just throw some emotion in there, and I'm there. And it was sad. I genuinely have a little bit of sadness that there wasn't more like emotive play on it. But again, that could just be me. Like I'm soppy at Christmas. I think it's a time that you are allowed to be a bit camp and kitsch and
Totally. I think that's it. No one went full. No one went whole hog in the kind of camp, kitschy Christmas vibe.
There's still time.
There is still time.
Yeah.
I want to see where Kevin Stag Do takes it. But it's like Aldi's the closest. I think your point on staggering it is a really, really good one, because that does feel more like a sense of occasion. And you're like, I now do want to know if they'll get married or not. I think they will.
I don't know.
That would be a Christmas spoiler.
Well, as we've said, at time of recording, there are still some more campaigns to come. We still have Waitrose, and I think we still have Tesco. And I may have seen a sneaky preview of the Waitrose one, so it may be festive, guys. But yes, that will be out by the time this podcast airs, so I'm not revealing any secrets. That's all the time we have. Thank you both for coming in today. It was great to hear your insight. Thanks to John as always, and thanks to you for listening. Bye for now.